wittingly or not, they are running interference for human traffickers and for pedophiles, and shame on them.
How many pedophiles you got?
288.
How many kids you found?
I am Turning Point USA contributor Erin Elmore, and today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Tim Ballard and Eduardo Verastegui to discuss all things Sound of Freedom. It's hard to catch your breath after you watch this movie. It's so powerful, it's so upsetting, it's so emotional, and I know your journey, Tim, to getting this movie into the theaters was long and arduous. How did you go from working in the federal government to having a movie on the big screen?
Yeah, well, I never dreamed any of that would be a movie. I spent 12 years as a special agent in the government, undercover operator, Homeland Security. 10 years of that was on the border. And in year 12, I got so frustrated because they'd send me overseas to find Americans who were abusing children or American children. And if I didn't find that, they'd make me come home. But I'd always find children, and to me, it doesn't matter what country a child is from. The problem is child trafficking knows no borders and boundaries, but bureaucracy does. Mm-hmm. And so the last time they said come home was in 2013, and I called my wife and I said, I don't know if I should come home. Tell me to come home. I wanted her to tell me to come home, but I felt like if I stayed, we could finish. And she said, do not come home. I don't care what happens. I don't care if we end up living in a tent because we lose everything. Quit your job and stay. It ends up being one of the biggest rescue operations to date that we know of. It's funny, all the media the mainstream media that's hitting us now, ironically, they were responsible for getting the story in October of 2014 to him. Because back in those days, they were for us. Back in those days, they said, this is great. The story didn't change, something else changed. The culture changed. Right. In fact, CBS News had cameras on the ground and did a whole story, and everyone else parroted the story, and it was great. And he got a hold of the story. The rest is history in terms of what he did with it. So.
Tell me about that history.
Well, first of all, I just want to... The media who is trying to block this message, hearing Tim right now and knowing this story, they should apologize to the children who were rescued. They should apologize to Tim and all his friends who sacrificed their lives and everything to go and rescue those children, and so they can eventually one day tell their story. I met someone yesterday, he said, you know what, I was not going to see your film until I saw the Rolling Stone article. So, I want to see this film now. So, hey, God bless these guys, because somehow God is using them too for this movement that is growing and growing. More than 5 million people showing up in the first 10 days. Isn't that a miracle? Isn't this the American dream for him and for a Mexican filmmaker, 2 Mexican filmmakers, Alejandro and myself? Look what happened when the good people of Mexico and the good people of America meet. Sound of Freedom. We save children. What happened when the bad people of America and the bad people of Mexico connect? Child trafficking.
And having seen the movie, I don't understand what is political about this. Why is it being called a fantasy? Why is it saying you're going to get brainworms, metaphorically speaking?
Unless they're pedophiles. Well, unless, I don't know, I don't have an evidence. You have an evidence? I don't have an evidence, but maybe
I don't know.
They're involved in the crime, maybe, I don't know.
They are involved in running interference. Wittingly or not, they are running interference for human traffickers and for pedophiles, and shame on them for that. And they do owe those children an apology. Those children are now young adults. They will be telling their story. We're bringing them up in a month or two. And I invite The Guardian, I invite Rolling Stone, please, you who wrote these reports about this being some kind of conspiracy theory. QAnon, by the way, we finished that film. It was done, written, produced years before anyone heard the name QAnon. So that's an impossibility to say that's threaded throughout. And you saw the film, it's not there. Are they going to tell these kids, you're QAnon, you're a conspiracy, you were never rescued? I mean, I dare you. I dare you to do that.
Right.
Apologize to them.
And they all deserve an apology, and definitely this work speaks for itself. And I was going to ask you both, we know how the Oscars and all these award shows go. What do you think your chances? Probably 0, right?
I don't care. You know what? Our Oscars are the lives that this movie has been saving. For me, the Oscar, eternal Oscar, it's one child, one at a time. And this is about saving children. Now, of course, hey, any award is welcome, because for us, it's not the end. It's just a powerful mean that you can use it to reach more people. for that reason, yes, of course, I would love to get any award so we can, Tim and I, Alejandro and Jim, can share the word, share the message to millions of people so they can become ambassadors of freedom. So all together, I have no doubt that we can end this terrible reality and save children. Close your eyes for a second and just think about this. What if this is your son? What if this is my son? What would you do? What would I do? I'll do anything. I will hope that the entire world will stop what they're doing so they can help me to find my child. That's the motivation. Don't wait until this tragedy happens to you for you to wake up. God used this guy for me to receive the information. When you have the information, what are you going to do? Either you look the other way around or you act. Thank God for Tim Ballard because he inspired me to act and to make this movie with Alejandro Monteverde and Jim Caviezel. And our hope is that when people see this movie, they will leave the theater not only entertained, they will leave inspired to become the Tim Ballards of this world. We need more Tim Ballards.
The mainstream media, Rolling Stone, left-wing individuals, why don't they want people to see this movie?
They don't want to have a conversation, and this film is forcing a conversation. It's going to beg the question of 85,000 children, unaccompanied children, thousands of them under 5 years old show up at our southern border over the last 2 years alone and disappear to the sponsor. It's more difficult to adopt a cat from a shelter than it is to go to Health and Human Services, claim to be the sponsor, and take that child out. In fact, our taxpayer dollars are now paying for the transportation of this child into the hands of the sponsor. The sponsor is just whatever name the kid was given. Okay, no background check, nothing. They don't want to have that conversation. They don't want to talk about the fact that our sex education programs are really pornifying our kids, sexualizing them. They don't want to talk about what happens a few years later when kids are now told by law that they can consent to outrageous things like body mutilation or being injected with chemicals that could destroy their bodies, right? Because that's 1 centimeter away from saying, well, why can't that kid also consent? Now that they're sexualized and almost in some ways little sex robots, thanks to the education and social media and everything else, now the pedophiles get to say, consent to having sex with me. Identifies a 30-year-old, 13-year-old, and they've lost, mom and dad, you've lost everything. You've lost God, science, it's all been taken out, and now your kids are vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't have God and science, and I always tell young people that the first thing they do when they usher in communism and socialism is get rid of God, because then you don't have that faith, and you can be more reliant on the government.
You're vulnerable. You don't have God, you have nothing. You have yourself, and when you have yourself, you're dead.
You were talking about pedophiles, and now they want to call them minor attracted persons.
That's another part of the agenda that they don't want to talk about. What has changed, okay, from when The Guardian, Rolling Stone, and the others applauded the work that we did in October of 2014? What changed? I can tell you what changed. One thing that changed was they started publishing over the last 8 years stories about how we should change the name from pedophile to minor attracted persons, thus normalizing sex with children.
What percentage of these children get returned to their families?
Well, the truth is the majority of them, this is shocking, but the majority of them, they got into this because there was no family, or the family was participating in it. Traffickers seek vulnerability first. And if they find that, that's what they're going to prey upon. And so we have, in all the operations that I've run, we have aftercare services who become that family. So we actually are creating families. In fact, my wife has an organization called Children Need Families, which is adoption. So we can take these kids in high trafficking situations and get them out and get them to a family that will love them. Now, there's a percentage, of course, that do return to their family, and it's beautiful and wonderful. But it's too often the case that we have to create the family, be the family for them.
And we can change that. And that's part of this movement, is changing that horrible reality. But we cannot change it unless more people know that this is real, because a lot of people, they don't even know that this exists. How can you become a part of the solution when you don't even know that this problem exists in the first place? That's why this movement is so important. So millions of people, they don't have that excuse anymore. Oh, I didn't know. Well, now you know. What are you going to do about it?
How do you know when something's wrong, and what are you supposed to do?
Well, report. Like it says in the airport, call the number, call the police. And what to look for? As a human being, you inherently feel it. Something's off. This kid doesn't belong. This kid doesn't look like they're happy. This kid, you can just tell. And there's not like some telltale sign that's specific, but people notice. But they don't have the courage, oftentimes, to make the phone call. Make the phone call. It might be the last piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle. Maybe it seems insignificant. Call.
The movie touched on what happened overseas and outside of the United States, but the movie touches on how the United States is the biggest consumer of, whether it's pornography or child trafficking. Is it kids from very impoverished countries and that are brought here? And the movie touched on how these kids end up boats, planes, trains, automobiles, just taken everywhere.
So trafficking has different faces in different places, and it looks very different. Yes, in terms of who are these 85,000, and to the extent that a large percentage of them are being sex trafficked. Yes, I mean these are vulnerable, impoverished children who are easy to kidnap. But I mean we see cases of trafficking, like the Romeo trafficking, where it could be an affluent neighborhood where the 15-year-old girl has been compromised by her boyfriend. She was stupid enough to do some sex tapes or something, and then they use that as leverage and traffic her. You better keep servicing me and my friends, or you better get your own account online, dance naked, and make us money. Or this sex tape's going everywhere, to your grandma, to your grandpa, to your church congregation. So it has different looks, and I actually produced a documentary that is on Amazon right now that answers the question. It's called "It's Happening Right Here," and it talks about all the access points in the United States where predators are getting to children.
It's so scary to think about as a parent. It truly is.
Yeah, it's more scared and more dangerous not to do something in the long term. That's why this is an opportunity. We are right now living the most amazing opportunity to end this. So many people are saying, you know what, should I go and see the film? We of course go and see it, because we are sending a message to the world. The only reason why now we were invited to go to Washington to show the film to senators and Congress in the most important city of the world, where the most important decision makers are living, is because of the success of the film, because of you. And because of you now, we received this invitation. Can you imagine touching Washington? You touch the world, touching the hearts of these guys who make decisions. As Tim said before, they're forced to have the conversation that they didn't want to have before. So so many miracles are happening.
How were you received by the left when you were in D.C. and the politicians on that side of the aisle?
Well, we'll see, because we met with everyone, and I always use this analogy. Say, before we talk about politics, and this is beyond politics, this isn't about me or about Tim, it's about the children. Imagine this little house full of children, and the house is on fire. And then, next thing you know, you have this fire truck coming from this direction, and another fire truck coming from this other direction, right? And then they start arguing. Hey, this is my territory. No, this is my zip code. No, you want the commission. No, you're the thief. No, you're the thief. No, blah, blah, blah. When they finish arguing, the kids are dead. What they should have done when they got there, pull out their water hose, bring the fire down, both of them, save the children, and continue with the debate. Millions of children are on fire today. I don't care if you're left, right, up, and down. We need to bring our water hose, all of us, at the same time, bring the fire down and save the children once and for all. And let's just put pause in politics. This is about kids. It's not about politics.
And this isn't a political movie. It really isn't at all. That's why it's so mind-blowing. Everyone left, right, and center should take something away from this, that we have to protect children. And so you played a great character in the movie, a bit of an angel investor. And I read recently in real life that was Glenn Beck. Is that true?
It's kind of a composite character of a lot of different people, but absolutely Glenn Beck is who I would credit. When I left the government, I had no money. And I had been on Glenn Beck's show for a different reason, for a book that I wrote that I think 12 people bought. But somehow it ended up on Glenn Beck with Glenn. And so I hit him up and I said, Glenn, this is crazy. Maybe you remember me, maybe you don't. I got to rescue kids. And he responded. His lawyer said, you're crazy, stay away from this guy, he's nuts. And Glenn, he did it. He opened the spigots up and allowed us to do those operations that covered the entire first year, including the big operation that's depicted in the film.
That was so brilliant. Just the strategy. And Vampiro, is that Vampiro?
Very real person.
Yeah.
Real person.
They're real. It's based on a true hero. It's based on true stories. And of course, it's about the children. I played this character named Paul Hutchinson. I changed to Pablo Delgado because at that time we wanted to protect other identities, including Vampiro, who he has another name. At the end of the day, it was how can we tell the story about a man who sacrificed everything, his family, money, and everything to save the children. And as you know, it's very hard to tell the story about this guy because when he's involved in 200 rescue missions and you need to do 2 hours, you say, hermano, we need a TV series with 200,000 episodes. We need just 2 hours. So we got a little bit of so many operations. He did 3 operations in Colombia. He saved more than 150 children. In the movie, it's only 54 because we got the
120,
little element. 120, sorry.
Okay.
120.
They'll call me a liar. They
Yeah,
love to,
yeah,
look
yeah.
at,
I know.
Jack
You're right.
Paul.
Yeah.
But it was like a lot of people, yeah, but what about the jungle, everything? Well, he went to the jungle in Haiti. So I have a license with Alejandro as a filmmaker to get a little bit of everything and put it together. But every little of everything is true.
It was also hard to watch Miss Colombia, or what?
And Miss
Cartagena.
Yeah.
Miss Cartagena,
Yeah.
a young woman.
Yeah, go look her up. She looks just like the actress. Yeah.
But how does a woman that is supposed to be loving and nurturing knock on doors and try to sell children?
It's insane, but every effective child trafficking ring, their main recruiter is almost always a woman, because they're betraying everything about them, every fiber of their being that they come with inherently. They are betraying, and they have to in order to play the role. But that's why the kids get tricked, because it's much easier to trust, Miss Cartagena than it is, some dude, right? So.
And that's why it breaks my heart to see that all these people that are doing this are not aliens from like Mars, or they're human beings made of the same thing that you and I were made, right? That in some point they were children. What happened then when they're growing up? What kind of decisions they're making? What happened to them as well? And in order for them to become this, like, what name?
Monster.
Monster, but beyond that, 'Cause they're all, we're all brothers and sisters. God created all of us. So it breaks my heart to see another brother and sister who their talents are being used to do so much evil. It doesn't matter, even if you kill them, how can you repair the damage of the kid? That kid is going to be marked forever, unless he reinvents himself and then become a diamond. And they can. I know a lot of organizations, including what Tim is doing, that are helping these kids after they've been rescued. The story doesn't end in the rescue. It begins there, because now what? You need to investigate, who were involved in the crime, how much damage they have psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and then after that start the healing. Let the healing begin.
You touched on the kids a little bit. Where are they? How are they doing?
It's amazing. So we've stayed in contact with them when they were ready, because they go to an aftercare center. In this case, we partnered with a group called Renacer in Colombia. And a lot of them, after they got through their program, started calling us like, "We want to meet you guys. We want to know who you are." And we're friendly with many of them and help them. Remember little boy Simba? Okay, so he doesn't have that kind of hair in real life, but he ended up becoming a hairdresser, believe it or not, and a really accomplished one. And he works as an advocate to fight human trafficking. In fact, a couple of years ago, he was in the streets of Cartagena finding victims. He found a woman, a young woman. I think she was a minor, and she was pregnant. The night he found her and told her, "There's help for you," she said to him, "I can't believe you've come to me, because I'm planning to abort this baby or kill myself," which would do both. And he said, "Please don't do it. I just got married. If you have the baby, I will raise the baby." He adopted the baby. The woman.
Simba, can you imagine?
Yeah, that's little Simba. That's the story of little Simba. One of the little girls, the smallest girls, her name is Angie. I can say her name because she's an advocate. She just recently briefed the First Lady of Colombia, and she shows the images from the operation that you see on the island. She became a seamstress, and we helped we help all of them. In fact, they have a little nonprofit called Tejiendo Sueños, which means to weave dreams. And so she ends up doing this little mom and pop kind of shop as a seamstress. She's married, has 2 kids. And recently, about 6 months ago, the Armada, the Navy that provided the transport, you see the boats that the CTI agents jump off on the beach. You see that?
Yeah, of course.
So they know that they followed up with her. They just gave her, the Colombian Navy just gave her a contract to sew all the new recruit uniforms for all the new recruits that come into the Navy in Colombia. So, I mean, these stories are incredible. They're the first group of kids we rescued, so they're the first to become young adults. And so they can tell us, did it work? Was it worth it? And it was, and we're bringing them all up, I think, in August. And those who want to participate, and they're going to tell their stories from their own perspective and their own mouths.
When we were rejected by so many studios, and finally, after a lot of prayer, so Angel Studios show up, rescue the film, and they asked me, so what day you want to release this film? I was thinking like, well, you know what, this is March, maybe September will be perfect, enough time to prepare. How about September 15, Independence Day of Mexico? Great idea. They called me the next day. Independence Day, but United States, July 4th. But that's tomorrow, and this is the biggest films ever. Eduardo, if the U.S. is the #1 consumer of child sex in the world, we need to shake their conscience by, yes, let's celebrate their freedom in one hand. With the other hand, let's do something so we can bring freedom back to the children that are not free. Anyway, so we picked the day, and I find out later when Tim told me that the little girl was rescued on July 4th.
That's correct.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, that little baby's all grown up and doing very well and beating Indiana Jones. Was that like the first moment you're like, yes, what a shock and what a surprise. And their budget was $300 million?
Well, yeah, 300 million versus 14 million. They had 2,000 more theaters than we had. They had a whole weekend, by the way. Angel Studios had the cojones, and this guy as well, to open Sound of Freedom on a Monday. Like, what? Who opens on a Monday? Because you want to get big numbers. So we come in and with every disadvantage. Again, 2,000 more screens than we did. And how many?
And $2 budget P&A.
Oh yeah, their budget
Compared to them, you know?
Their P&A was how many millions?
More than 100, yeah.
100 million. I mean, and yet it wasn't like by a little. It was like a couple million. We beat them on the July 4th week. So crazy.
The prayer, God, the people, your sacrifice, and the sacrifice of so many, and trying to be obedient to God, and that's what happened. But you know what? At the end of the day, we knew from the beginning, we are not called to be successful. We are called to be faithful to God. That is our success. Now, if by being faithful to God, success comes, it's a blessing. Hey, let's use that success to change the world, to make a difference. But if it doesn't come, we'll have peace.
And thinking about my child and all the other children out there, what can we do after seeing the movie? Of course, we're going to tell everyone to go see it. I bought tickets for people already. I'm texting everyone to go. But what is an action item?
Go to angel.com/freedom. Angel.com/freedom. Buy tickets for you, for your family, or buy tickets for someone else that cannot afford to go to the theater with their family. And because of your generosity, they can see the film for free. That's how we change the world. That's how we change culture. If we change culture, we end child trafficking.
I've always dreamed there's a silent majority out there that is going to rise above this craziness that's happening, where children are at the crosshairs of this really just godlessness in this country. And I think this film proved that there is a silent majority, and they are powerful, and they are rising up. And I think we've just begun, really. And the lines, it's not just about saving kids in a country. That's the movie, that's the story. It's become about so much more. Everything wrong with the world, everything that's dark, the light is exposing. And it really does begin with what's happening to children all over the United States and all over the world. So I feel that God is touching hearts.
Well, I appreciate your time, and this was such a powerful film, and all the work that you do is truly inspiring and helping so many people. I'm going to go see it again and make sure everyone goes and sees it.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time with a child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.